Ever wondered why Chinatowns are found in so many major cities around the world? Recent studies reveal over 60 million Chinese living outside mainland China, establishing Chinatowns in over 130 major cities across 34 countries. Let's dive into the captivating history behind these iconic cultural hubs.
Octo Wonders.
Most of these 60 million overseas Chinese come from 4 provinces along the southern coast of China: Guangdong, Fujian, Guangxi, and Hainan. But what's the reason for migrants choosing these specific provinces? Simply put, it's for survival. The story goes back to ancient times when Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unite China, focused on farming as the mainstay of his empire and didn't like Confucianism. Many scholars and traders left because of this and settled in the less controlled areas of southern China. This is why Guangdong, Fujian, Guangxi, and Hainan became safe places for Chinese people escaping difficult situations. Ever since, these provinces have been top choices for Chinese people moving away within China. Over time, China experienced many changes in leadership and a lot of trouble, causing many people to move south. Also, people from the north often attacked, forcing many southerners to move even farther south to survive. With little land to farm and not being welcomed by locals, these migrants had to keep going south. Sometimes they even crossed the South China Sea to nearby places like the Philippines, where the oldest Chinatown is located in Manila. Known as Binondo, it started in 1594. However, wars were constantly occurring on Chinese land, and each time, immigrants crossed the sea. Because of this, the Philippines also soon reached a saturation point. Therefore, these immigrants had to go further and further away. That's how they ended up in Southeast Asian countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. This pattern continued into the late 16th century when the European powers began their colonial ventures in Asia. Chinese migrants, predominantly farmers, turned to commerce in Southeast Asia due to the scarcity of land for farming. Thanks to this, the Chinese people knew local conditions better than anyone else. Colonial empires hired these Chinese people as middle managers for colonial rule. However, the turning point for Chinese migrants came with the Opium Wars in the 1800s. Following the victory in the Opium Wars, the British acquired Hong Kong and opened several ports in Guangdong and Fujian. These ports, essentially treaty ports, provided employment opportunities for the influx of Chinese migrants escaping domestic turmoil. Through ports like Guangzhou, Fuzhou, and Haiphong, many Chinese embarked on journeys to America, Europe, Australia, and beyond, seeking opportunities as demand for labor increased in Western plantations for crops like sugar and cotton, as well as in mines. Chinese laborers became sought after for their diligence and resilience. The term coolies referred to affordable Chinese laborers in British colonies. They were also brought to the U.S. for projects like the Transcontinental Railroad and Western mines, sometimes serving as substitutes for black slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation took effect in 1863. Similar to their counterparts in Southeast Asia, these Chinese workers earned positive evaluations. Driven by ambitions for success, they worked diligently to earn money while generally staying out of trouble. The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad across the United States resulted in a heightened influx of Chinese immigrants to the U.S. As Chinese immigration increased, concerns among Americans led to the enactment of the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, abruptly halting Chinese laborer immigration across the country. However, due to continued labor shortages, Japanese and Korean workers began to replace Chinese laborers, much like how Chinese laborers had replaced African Americans. With the increasing number of Chinese, it was impossible for them to gather exclusively in Chinatowns in foreign countries. It's important to note that Chinatowns were not planned from the beginning. The Chinatown established in Manila, Philippines in the 16th century was essentially a ghetto, similar to how Jews were segregated in Europe. When the number of Chinese laborers in Manila grew significantly, the Spanish, who ruled the Philippines at the time, established Chinatown to prevent mingling with the white population. In the mid-18th century, when Chinatowns emerged in Indonesia, which was under Dutch rule, the Chinese were appointed to handle administrative and tax matters and were allowed to engage in trade and money lending. Helping the colonial government, they met anger from local people. In various parts of Indonesia, there were massacres of Chinese people and looting of shops. Chinatowns, which served as trading posts, grew bigger as Chinese people gathered together for defense. In Malaysia, as turmoil persisted, Chinese immigrants were forcibly relocated to a small piece of land at the southern edge of the country and expelled from the Federation. This forcibly independent piece of land later became Singapore. The process of establishing Chinatowns in the United States and the United Kingdom was not much different from that in Southeast Asia. As the economic crisis of the late 19th century hit, Chinese immigrants, who had previously thrived on cheap labor, were pushed into job theft, competing with locals for employment. Chinese laborers, who endured the largest group lynching in U.S. history during the Los Angeles massacre, looked for areas with less racial discrimination. They migrated to cities like San Francisco and Vancouver, gathering in specific areas for protection from local reactions. Increasing their population was crucial for survival. This is how Chinatown came to be. It's an extreme measure that overseas Chinese took to survive. Despite these difficulties, most Chinatowns survived. In Southeast Asia, the Chinese dominated the economy, leveraging their expertise in commerce and superior knowledge of local conditions. And in the United States and Europe, the skyrocketing property prices in urban Chinatowns speak volumes now. They initially aimed to earn money and succeed, then returned to China. As a result, they were reluctant to assimilate locally or even learn the local language. Businesses were also exclusive, with family or hometown ties being crucial, leading to a highly exclusive nature even among fellow Chinese. However, due to continued turmoil on the mainland, such as the First Sino-Japanese War and the warlord era, returning was not an option. Subsequently, with the establishment of Communist China, the return route was completely blocked for decades, leaving Chinatown symbolizing an awkward position for Chinese immigrants, neither fully Chinese nor foreign. Despite these challenges, when considering the broader perspective, Chinatowns represent the largest diaspora or migration in human history, surpassing any other diaspora, such as the Jewish diaspora, in terms of scale and historical significance. Even disregarding ancient history, the mass migration of over 10 million in the late 20th century alone during China's era of reform and opening up is unprecedented. While the motives and origins of immigrants have changed nowadays, one thing is certain: it's still ongoing.